So I'm doing some casual research and reading the Journal of Weather Modification, volume 55 from 2003. And the funny thing is that the cover of the publication is actually all about fog creation and seeding. And this is a experiment. I haven't even gotten to the details yet because I am stuck on this memoriam. But here you go. Warm fog elimination by seeding with salty drops. And so I haven't even gotten that far yet. But I literally was reading this cover to cover, and I am basically doing some hardcore research on owning the weather in 2025, and basically what I have decided to do, aside from reading it and reporting on it, I have also decided to go back through the bibliography and actually attempt to find and then read every single reference in this manuscript. And so what I stumbled upon is the Weather Modification, the Journal of Weather Modification, going all the way back to who knows when. I haven't even looked at the archives yet, but this report is basically Operation Popeye, Weather Modification in Southeast Asia from 1966 to 1972. And this was written in 1982. So I stumble across the Weather Modification magazine and I start reading about this memoriam to Arnett Dennis. And whatever, this guy was a physicist, he had a PhD. So he moves to California in 1955 and then he joins Weather Modification Co. of San Jose, California, where he managed cloud seeding projects in California and several other states. Eventually he moves on to South Dakota and then becomes the Associate Director of the Institute of Atmospheric Sciences. And there he took on the management of a number of cloud seeding and weather radar studies in South and North Dakota. And most of the funding came from this government agency that I had never heard of before, but it was known as the Skywater Project. So basically they were dealing with the challenge of a weather modification experiment that basically resulted in a massive flood that caused the deaths of 238 people because of heavy rains and a dam failure. So this was going on in South Dakota, and this is elaborated upon by this magazine and a project known as the Skywater Project, which I have never heard of before. The Institute of Atmospheric Sciences had more than 50 employees and contractors involved in these studies in projects located in both South and North Dakota. So Dr. Dennis was the director of the Institute of Atmospheric Sciences. All right, definitely need to rehearse this way better. So they were battling the public perception that the Institute of Atmospheric Science cloud seeding experiments conducted over the plains of Rapid City on June 9, 1972 contributed to heavy rains over Black Hills, a dam failure, and a massive flood that swept through Rapid City later in the evening that caused the deaths of 235 people. So what's interesting about this was then I decided that I was going to do some research on this flood. And lo and behold, Wikipedia is your first hit. 1972, Black Hills flood, also known as the Rapid City flood, was the most detrimental flood in South Dakota history and one of the deadliest floods in U.S. history, most likely before Hurricane Helene. And then the flood took place in Black Hills of western South Dakota. 15 inches of rain in a small area caused Rapid Creek and other waterways to overflow. Severe flooding of residential and commercial properties in Rapid City occurred when Canyon Lake Dam became clogged with debris and failed in the late hours, resulting in 238 deaths and 3 1,057 injuries. Also, 1,355 homes and 5,000 automobiles were destroyed. An estimated property damage valued at $1.71 billion in 2023. And then they go on to the causes. And this is really upsetting to read, but this is a perfect indication of how trustworthy Wikipedia is. Now they give you this long-winded explanation about the rains that specific day. And then, okay, here we go. A strong, low-level easterly flow which forced the moist, unstable air upslope on the hills. This sustained orographic effect helped the air rise, cool, release moisture in repeating thunderstorms. Another contributing factor was the unusually light winds at higher atmosphere levels, which did not disperse the moist air. And then, okay, here we go. We're still describing the atmospheric conditions. A mesoscale cloud mass from Colorado also moved towards Rapid City, and one of the cloud masses amplified the mid-level moisture over Rapid City. Okay, and then here we go. Finally, after all that, cloud seeding experiments being conducted by the Institute of Atmospheric Science on clouds west of Rapid City were speculated to have contributed to the unusual amount of rain. However, there's no evidence of that. Just the worst flood in South Dakota history. Here you go. Cloud seeding experiments being conducted by the Institute of Atmospheric Science on clouds west of Rapid City were speculated to have contributed to the unusual amount of rainfall. However, there's no evidence that the two phenomena were related. No. Just the worst flood in South Dakota history. So now you see how Wikipedia operates. And yeah, I'm going to keep going with this, but figured I'd take a quick break just to report on this and how far back this goes. I mean, it's insane. And what's crazy is that I had always, over the years, primarily focused on just Florida weather history, Florida weather modification experiments like Project Storm Fury and the Florida Area Cumulus Project, but I never really read into more details into other weather modification experiments, especially ones where hundreds of people died and the results looked almost identical to what we're seeing right now across Kentucky, Tennessee, West Virginia, and Virginia.
Even in the 60s, the CIA used this to bring down monsoons during the Vietnam War to wash out the Viet Cong. Governments have been playing with this thing.
Alleged to.
Alleged to, right.
Yeah.